Well, some more sad news for millennials or anyone renting who are trying to get into the housing market. And if you're thinking of extending your amortization on your mortgage to make ends meet, you'll want to listen in. Develle Morrison, broker with Bosley Real Estate and regular contributor here on Toronto This Weekend, joins me now. Hey, Develle.
Hey, how are ya?
Good. How are you?
Good.
What's the vibe this weekend? What are you going to be doing? How are you enjoying this weekend's beautiful weather?
Well, I'm going to be working.
Oh, but you know what? You get to show beautiful homes. So you'll be doing something you love, at least.
Absolutely. So I've got a listing presentation, then I'm doing an open house. It's all good.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into, we have so much to talk about today. So let's first of all talk about the nursing home situation. So 3 nursing homes in Toronto have sold their land to housing developers instead of choosing to make the necessary upgrades to the facilities. We all remember COVID, right? Like we all remember nursing homes being like just this point of just disaster after disaster. They were not handling the pandemic well. When you hear that these nursing homes have chosen to sell instead of doing these necessary upgrades so that, you know, the elderly in our communities would be able to live in safety, how does that make you feel?
Well, I should say off the top that one of the nursing homes where they're selling it is actually where my grandmother passed away
No.
at the beginning of 2021 in COVID.
Oh my goodness, Develle. Oh.
Yeah. And I mean, this particular nursing home, it actually didn't have a ton of COVID cases. So it wasn't really one of the bad ones. But I mean, I understand why they're selling because obviously they can get paid so much more money. That being said, I think it would have been great if there was some sort of partnership. Maybe you do a nursing home on the lower floors and a condo on the upper floors. There are other, places like that in Toronto.
Yeah.
So it's not unheard of. I mean, we have an aging population.
Yeah.
The baby boomers are going to be needing nursing homes at some point. So, the question becomes, where are long-term care beds going to be when the demand is so great?
Yep. Exactly. And that's the thing too, right? So, it gets worse. While we're talking about 3 homes, 6 homes in total are planning to not extend their licenses and are getting out of the business. And this is according to an investigation by the Globe and Mail. But what's interesting, Develle, is that in the province, there are 44 projects with a total of almost close to 3,000 new beds. And 4,000 upgraded ones have been completed or under construction, according to a list of capital development projects from the Ministry of Long-Term Care that the Globe and Mail had received. So, there is effort to make sure that there are more beds for, as you said, our aging population. But it just makes me wonder, is this a trend? Will we see more of these private organizations that are running nursing homes saying, we're out, we just can't do it? We're talking about, I will read some of the upgrades that they are expecting. I had a list here, is to comply with design standards, requiring single and double occupancy rooms. That's just, there's more to this list. But, some of these homes have not been renovated in years. So will this be a trend?
I think it could be. And I got to tell you, these homes aren't they're sad. I remember before we put my grandmother in a home, I had to go and research and go to another home in Parkdale. And you sort of walk through some of these homes and quite frankly, you want to cry.
Yeah.
Because people are just sort of sitting. I mean, they're elderly. This is why they're in a home, but they're just sort of sitting there staring out in space. Aging really sucks. So, I mean, it might be a little bit controversial in terms of what I'm about to say, but I think that we also need to wrap our heads around MAID, the medically assisted dying process, because I think, we are allowed to put down our cats and dogs if they are not feeling, if they have something, if they're so sick that it's irreparable. So why don't we treat ourselves, human beings, the same way we're treating our pets? We should be allowed to put ourselves down if, our illnesses are so much so that we just don't want to be here anymore.
I disagree, Develle. I think we need to care for our elderly better. Some communities and cultures do that better than others. And I think it's a matter of not seeing people as burdens, but seeing people as blessings. And I think that is the problem with our society. My mom used to work in a number of long-term care facilities. And she would tell me that like people wouldn't come and visit their parents or visit their grandparents. They would just leave them there. And so she and, her coworkers were that sense of family. I mean, she would, do the ladies' nails and put on a little makeup for them for their little, social events and so forth. I mean, she's taking care of some influential people in our city as well who again had the same situation where people are forgotten about. I think it's about caring for people, not seeing them as a burden. And some cultures do that better than others. And I would say we need to do a better job of that. When you age, that should be a blessing that you've gone through your life and now you get to rest. Now you actually get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And that's not the case here in Canada.
Well, and I'm not saying that everybody does MAID. The people who want to be in a long-term care facility, that's great. It's wonderful that they're cared for. But I think that people who don't want to be there need to have a choice. Again, I go back to my grandmother. She was 98. And, probably in her early 90s, she was kind of like, I don't want to be here anymore. You'd ask her, how are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm hanging on.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's great to be elderly and be able to do stuff. Great. But there's a segment that just, they're done. They feel like they've lived their lives. And so I just feel that MAID should be an option. It's not mandatory, obviously, but if it's something that you want to choose, you should choose because it's your life, is all I'm saying.
And it currently is a choice for many Canadians. Okay, let's move on to another topic here, another headline. A new study by consulting firm Mercer Canada says millennials who are lifelong renters will have to save 50% more than those who own a home in order to have enough money to retire. Gosh, the news keeps getting worse for millennials who are just trying to break in.
It's not great. I mean, it's one of those things where we've talked about for years. There are advantages to becoming a homeowner.
Yeah.
There really are. But when you're in a market that's so expensive for people, how do people become homeowners, especially when their rents are so high? How do they even save? I do think that young people have to get creative by, buying either in a cheaper area, buying with a friend or a family member, just trying to get on that first level of the property ladder before they move up.
Yeah. I think you said this before too, Devel. I think we have this idea of just getting the house, and it's maybe the small steps of getting the condo, building your equity and then moving, to a house eventually. But I think for many of us, it's just the idea of having, that single detached home with the garage and, the 3 bedrooms and, we have the list because we all watch HGTV. But that's not reality, and especially in the city right now.
Absolutely. So, you know what? Buy that small 500 square foot condo if that's all you can afford.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you just work your way up.
Before we move on from real estate development, I wanted to get your thoughts on this headline that we saw this week. On Thursday, an assistant superintendent of the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions questions if lenders are leaving homeowners to build up more debt by extending their amortization. Mr. Yelkin is concerned that, with many people trying to extend, especially those with variable rates, with them extending their amortization, their mortgages, they're just building up more debt and not paying off their principal.
I feel like these guys are buzz killers. Let people stay in their homes. Let them work down their mortgage payments. They will figure it out. I don't think that there's an issue with people extending their amortizations.
Yeah.
Maybe they will make lumps of payments later on in the years when things get better. But right now, they're just trying to get by and keep on going and stay in their house and make sure their house is affordable. So I'm like, just stop it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think if banks are working with their clients to try to keep them in their homes, and if that means that that's, a longer period of time on your mortgage, then I think you have to do what's best in that situation. And yes, that might mean more debt. That will mean more debt. But I think, in a society, we would prefer to have people in their homes than homeless or, renting
Exactly.
or whatever that might look like in our cities.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like stop being buzz killers. I mean, we already know that OSFI is going to come up with more mortgage restrictions in the next couple of
Yeah.
months to make it that much harder for people to buy a home. But we want people to be in houses. We don't want them to be bummed out that they can't get into the market.
Yeah.
So let it go.
Okay, I want your thoughts on, the talk of the town this week, and that is the future plans of Ontario Place. So, right now we know plans are heading towards the direction of this fancy spa with taxpayers paying for the underground parking facility. There is now talk of the Science Centre moving to Ontario Place with Anna Bilau saying that she thinks that would be a great idea. Doug Ford kind of dropping hints throughout the week saying that maybe the province has already been thinking about this. The people of Flemington Park and surrounding areas are upset and really treasure having the Science Centre there. They do not want more housing and more buildings in their neighborhood. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's funny. Your last sentence there, that's the whole NIMBY thing, not in my backyard. We all know we need housing in the city. Don Mills and Eglinton is a good transit hub. There's going to be an LRT station there. If more housing does not make sense there, then where? And so I think that's a great idea, moving the Science Centre. It makes it a lot more central to the city versus being up at Don Mills and Eglinton. We don't really need a spa, like really. And so I think, at Ontario Place, keep it something that's in the public realm. Love the idea of the Science Centre, or even just a park area with restaurants and food trucks. It's funny that we can't seem to make up our minds about what the heck to do with the space on the water, which should be like this amazing thing, but we can't get our act together to do something great.
I know, because it's prime property. I think, okay, so I agree with you that many times when we bring up topics, there is a lot of NIMBYism, but I actually hear and feel the people of Flemington and Thorncliffe, because it is an area of our city that is lower income. The Science Centre is a place of employment for many in the surrounding area. It brings people there. The Ontario line, there's supposed to be a Science Centre stop, right? So this is all catered around the Science Centre. And so I feel like this is not as much NIMBYism as we've seen maybe in other cases throughout the city. This seems to be more of like, we just want a fledgling community where it's not just high-rise buildings and, government housing, but we actually want infrastructure. We want places where people will want to come to our community. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. But so if you look at the, God, I forgot the name of the company, but I guess it's the old IBM site.
Yeah.
It is the northwest corner of Don Mills and Eglinton.
Yeah.
And they have a big mixed use development going up there. It's commercial, it's well as residential. There'll be tons of condos. There's a massive supercenter across the road. If you walk up Don Mills, there's lots of great stuff. There's a great Chinese supermarket. There's great food. Anyways, my point is that when you build up more condos in that area, there will be more places to go and things to do and more places for people to find jobs as well too. So it's not that everything is dead if the Science Centre moves. I think we're just adding more to the neighborhood. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Again, these are all talks, and there is talk of potentially turning the old building, if it did move, into a community hub for the existing community. We'll see. Okay, you have a bee in your bonnet when it comes to weather apps. Do you? Do you have an issue with weather apps, especially as we're enjoying this beautiful weather? I have to say, I have 2 weather apps on my phone, and they're never accurate. I mean, never accurate.
And so I just don't understand, with all the advances that we've made in technology, why in the world can we not get the weather straight? Why can we not accurately report the weather? And, in most of our jobs, if we make inaccurate predictions, there's some sort of consequences.
Yeah.
Not with the weather. I don't get it.
So apparently, the inaccuracy of weather apps is, it continues. The best weather apps achieve an accuracy of 80% or higher, according to Forecast Advisor, that kind of rates these apps. But it is a problem that all of us are dealing with, and I think especially with the sunshine out. I mean, I think every parent as well goes through this every morning when you're trying to dress your kids. And they're fighting with you on if they should wear the coat or not. And the weather app says one thing, and then they come home with no coat. And they're like, look, it was sunny outside. So this is an issue, like a real life struggle for all of us. Okay, this is another interesting story. The mayor of New York has appointed a rat czar. So Kathleen Karate, who previously spearheaded the Department of Education's rat reduction efforts, will become the director of rodent mitigation in New York. Why did this headline catch your eye, Deval, this week?
Because it was so ridiculous. And she's making $155,000 a year.
She's doing good.
The rat czar. I mean, that's a great income. And this is USD because it's in New York City. Although New York is such an expensive city, that's probably not enough money to live in New York. But
yeah.
It's an aside. But yeah, I just thought the fact that they have a paid full-time position whose sole function, and that she did it for the education sector before. I mean, can we get someone like this in Toronto to deal with rats and raccoons?
So apparently when she saw this job description, she was like, this job was meant for me. It was she felt like the job description was written specifically for her. And so she will coordinate across city agencies and community groups. And she pledges to look for the most effective technique to mitigate rats. Hey, you never know. This might be the next thing that the next mayor of Toronto needs to appoint, a rat czar. We need to take a bit of our lessons from New York. Okay, one other real estate story that we didn't get to that I'd love your opinion on. There is a new organization called Our Borough. And it is Ontario-based. It's a financing company that will contribute between 25 and 75% to a down payment for first-time home buyers in Toronto, Hamilton, London, Kitchener, Waterloo, and Guelph in exchange for an unequal share of the home's appreciation and value. So basically, when you sell your home, they will get their percentage back on what they put in for the down payment. Is this too good to be true?
I guess I would say I don't know. And full disclosure, my brokerage does have a relationship with Our Borough. Okay. I don't have any direct experience with them other than attending their presentations where they talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if this is your only way to get into the market, as we were just speaking previously, do it. But, if you only have your 5%, then just do it yourself.
Yeah.
As opposed to having somebody else partner with you. I guess my questions are, what happens if this company, doesn't exist later on? How does that all work? I think it might be difficult to find an A lender, like a big name bank, who will mortgage this. And so therefore you're going to most likely pay a higher rate. It's great that the buyer doesn't have to pay it back until they sell the property. There are other programs out there. Excuse me. My stepsister, for example, she used a program called Options for Homes.
Okay.
Which was really, really good for her because it helped her get in the market as, I talk about the property ladder all the time. It helped her get in the market with a 1-bedroom condo. Mm-hmm. Then she was able to upgrade to a 2-bedroom condo. Well, now she owns a triplex.
Wow.
And so it is about the stepping stones, so I do think it's important for people to do what they can to get into the market, that it helps. But I think it's also good to examine all your options, whether it's Our Borough, whether it's Options for Homes. But yeah, just kind of check things out.
That's fair. Thanks so much, Deval.
No problem.